Hello, I was getting my slides in order. I'm just going to jump in straight away, and that is that I'm going to talk about the future, maybe. Since Lud mentioned we need to be hyper incursive. So I think what has happened the last 20 years that people got so into Darwinism, and especially because there was the enemy of all the people against Darwinism. So everyone kind of got together and said, we're going to make sure everyone knows evolution. But that as a result, people forgot to pay attention to human development, and that there is a lot to learn from human development. And incidentally, dus Luhmann, as Lud described him, allows us to bring up the topic. And super interesting was that Lud pointed out this early experience of Luhmann that he never came clear about, that he didn't really talk about it. And so this would be a great material for psychoanalysts to kind of try to see what was going on inside the psyche of Luhmann, that he kind of blocked that out. And one could even make the argument, but I'm not a psychoanalyst, that the fact that he went and developed a theory where humans were not really an element is precisely the reason it may have been motivated by the early experience, because he didn't want to think about the horrible things that happened in the 20th century. So now, since I do this for you, Luhmann, I think I need to do this also for myself. And that brings us to something that Stuart Ampleby and actually the whole second order cybernetic community has been talking about, is the observer needs to be part of the theorizing. So we need to say also something about what this observer is doing and what is going on. And so this I created a similar picture for myself. So I came from Belgium and I was just programmed, that is just 95% Catholic when I grew up. And I didn't realize that I was just totally programmed to think of myself as a machine designed by the Roman Catholic God. In the 90s, I got introduced to Karl Popper's three world hypothesis, and he has a bucket in that book, and you will see the bucket later. So he's made me start playing with that container metaphor, and I didn't really understand that I was doing that until a couple of years later. And then in 2010, I had the great fortune to run into a psychoanalyst here in Ithaca with the name Howard Aldendorf. And he pointed me out that there is actually a literature in psychoanalysis that also focuses on the container. And some of you may be familiar with it. It's Ian Suttie, Ronald Fairbairn, Wilfred Bion, John Bowlby, Winnicott. Yeah. And then I had another great pleasure, and that is purely by accident. I got to know Jason and Stuart in July of 2020. They introduced me to cybernetics, and it was specifically Jason, who had also done some work on Karl Popper. And so we started comparing notes. And now, if I add an extra layer to this, then what actually happened, dus in the beginning, in my Cartesian upbringing, I was thinking of myself as standing outside the universe, or Luhmann, who's like hanging in the clouds and occasionally looking outside, or the clouds disappear and you can actually see something on Earth. And so that was my way of thinking. And then thanks to the container metaphor and all that other stuff, I got to start thinking more on the right. And here I'm picking up some of Lud's arguments, I think, because here I see myself as a discursive being, someone who is talking, listening, reading, writing, and then also observing. But I kind of use the word observe for something more to the left of the screen. Here, I'm definitely observing. I'm observing, I'm describing, I'm verifying. And there is really not too much talking going on. And this is also Hegel. You say thinking first, talking second, writing somewhere in the distant third. While on the right, I I put it all together. It's all equally important. So now I'm going back to Luhmann, and dus Luhmann number 3, philosophy of observation in an axiomatic system to be derived from Spencer Brown's laws of form. So that was the great gift, or one of the great gifts, or the second great gift. Dus after discovering Jason's engagement with Karl Popper, that was hearing Lou Kaufman talking about Spencer Brown over and again. So I said, I'm going to read up on Spencer Brown and see how he can be applied, perhaps in a way that hasn't been done, or maybe it has already been done, but just to understand what he's doing. And so I thought, so if Luhmann is doing his philosophy of observation, so yeah, maybe he means something different by observation than I do. That's okay. But is he paying attention to human development? And if we do that, then we have to ask, what is the first distinction? And when is the first distinction happening? And I may have already presented that, or some of you may remember, that the first distinction happens the moment we are born and we come out of a womb where we are, our hearing is developed in the womb, but many of the other senses become activated the moment we are born. And now we are thrown in this world with a mental universe in which we are encountering all sorts of objects. We actually become this, we come in the world as discursive beings. So we're playing with objects, we're smashing, creating, we're making noise, we learn to codify noise, and now this very important evolutionary step that we learn to read and write, and that is actually rather complicated activities. So if I try to stay dus in the context of Lumen 3 and what he's trying to do there, and I totally, I don't want to give this as a criticism. I think he may have been struggling with this question, as Lute points out. So, and I wish that Alex had been here, because then he could have understood that, or I think I'm trying to say what Alex is saying, that we start with an experience that is in our body, and so there is no language involved. But then, according to object relations, we actually use that bodily experience as a metaphor. And I would like to hear what Klaus has to say about that, because I remember his thought last time. So we play with this idea of the container, going in the container, out of the container. But then also we start in our head categorizing. And so here I'm mimicking Popper's three-world hypothesis, but what it's just doing is saying we have a special category for the artifacts, we have a category for human beings, and now we have a category for the real or the raw stuff in the world that we don't, or the thing and in the thing by itself. I don't know how Kant called it, and then dus we can go from a category to a set theory, but set theory has its own rules and everything, but you can kind of see a set as a variation of categorical logic. So now here I'm just doing this because I'm a Popper fanatic. Dus how this all happens. So as the baby learns about containers, he starts experimenting with containers. In this case, we have these three containers. But then the next step is to say, hey, there is me and there is another. And this where the discursive relations comes in. and that other may be very different from me. So therefore, these activities of reading and writing and talking and listening become really important. Now, the point of this slide is to just point out the super importance of the other. And now we have a framework to bring the researcher in all the discussions. Like this, the researcher is the guy on the left, and then he's talking with someone on the right. But the person he's talking within his head or in reality, or he's writing letters to him, or is just studying him. A person can be his colleagues, his students, but also his research subjects. But the important thing is that the researcher is a complete element of the picture. And now I get to the challenge that I think that Luhmann was struggling with, and society as a whole. That we have also Boolean logic, and Boolean logic is very simple. It's like plus, minus, yes, no, 0, 1, feel good, feel bad. And we are somehow, or a segment in society is convinced that there is a good and an evil force. And what they're kind of implying as is these two babies are like ready to start killing each other, but that is actually a narrative that we have superimposed on that. Now, what I'm trying to do here is kind of point out that there was this categorical logic that emphasizes containers, and there is category theory, and it has been brought up in the presentation by Rosen, and then there is Boolean logic, and that there is somehow a school that tries to say Boolean logic is first, and everything else is secondary. And Boolean logic is like the beginning of the universe, when there were all these pluses and minuses and electricity. And there is actually this another way of thinking. And here I call it Bateson and Mead model. You start with a family system, and that's where the baby kind of learns to figure out that there is an other, that there are objects, and that there is a world. And then from the family system, he learns that there are all those other systems that the family system is interacting with, and that there can be positive and negative feedback effects. So what I presented here was a way of doing cybernetics, and I still call it cybernetics because Margaret Mead supposedly came up with the name second order cybernetics, but personally it can be called whatever you want it to be called. So that cybernetics, I put an emphasis on the human interactions. But now we here in the Western civilization, we have to deal with the curse of the machine metaphor that came from Descartes and the La Métrie, but that also came with the idea of God as the creator of machines. So it gave us a creation story with God as a designer, and as our understanding of the world advanced, our conceptions of God changed, because now God is a computational quantum theorist or a maker of computers and robots. And so that is maybe really going on. And what I found so interesting that Ruth opened with that question is just that we're actually living in a traumatized society. So not anymore people, but large chunks of people are afraid to look inside themselves to understand what does it mean to be human, because it's painful. And so it's much easier to become a computer scientist and create this amazing computer technology. But then there is the dangerous step of saying, now I'm identical to that computer technology. And so in terms of ending with the question, so it all started with observation, and we were really talking about how we give meaning. But I haven't heard, or maybe you did speak about it, but I didn't hear it. Now, is this being covered, or that what is the image that comes up with observation? And for instance, I didn't hear you, or maybe you spoke, but I just didn't get it, about gestalts. There's the role of gestalts, and gestalts brings up metaphors, and that help us understand what is understood, or how people generate meaning. And that the big challenge here is when we try to translate from first to third person observation, because the third person, that is that we're observing someone else. And then we need to kind of say, so what does that mean from a first person? And that is the very big difficulty, or the major problem today. How can we do that? Because personally, I think of observation like the somewhere a photo camera that is looking and taking pictures and observing, but maybe Luhmann does mean something else by it, but I will find out. So this is my presentation. I have a few more slides in case there are specific questions, but this is it for now.